oath. I'm Richard Lonsdale, Chairman of the Planning Commission. I call the meeting to order. It is now 4 o'clock. Staff, please take roll call.
Commissioner Richard Lonsdale.
Here.
Commissioner Bob Howard.
Here.
Commissioner John Graber.
Here.
Commissioner Ann Warman. Here. Commissioner David Johnstone.
Here.
And Commissioner Dana Allen. Here.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Okay, has everybody had an opportunity to read the attached minutes? Okay, is there a motion for approval?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
A second.
Okay, carried. Okay,
Sorry if all are in favor.
oh, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carried. Staff, is there any communications?
The only thing is that, we know is that Dr. Walker has resigned, so we expect the mayor to appoint a new planning commission member next week.
Okay.
Keep that someone in mind, but until that person accepts, we'll just say mum for now.
Thank you. Okay, public comments. Is anybody in the audience that would like to address the commission? Comments are limited to 3 minutes and 5 speakers. Comment on matters listed on the agenda are welcome. If there's anyone who wants to comment, ask them to come to the podium, state their name, address for the record. Anybody on Zoom?
None.
Oh, okay. Unfinished business. Staff, is there any unfinished business from the last meeting? Okay. New business. Staff, is there any report on new business?
So we have 3 items tonight. The first is a presentation that you're going to receive from Allison Osterberg, who is manager at Thurston Regional Planning Council. Allison's going to present information on the regional transportation plan. This is important for us. Well, one, just because it's a region, but 2, our comp plan update requires that our transportation element be consistent with the regional transportation plan. So the information we get from them is something we have to take into account and incorporate into our own transportation work. We were going to have Ryan Shea from SCJ here remotely. He might still pop in, but he's with SCJ Alliance, and they're the firm that we've contracted to do our transportation element for the comp plan. So even if he's not here tonight, he will be working with Allison, at least on that aspect of what we need to do for our update. So,
Excuse me, quick question. I mean, this may fall in somewhere else, but now will this go, since we did the joint comprehensive plan with Thurston County, is this going to fit in with both with our comprehensive plan and the Thurston County joint comprehensive plan?
So I don't think this is really going to touch on the joint plan with the county.
Okay.
I mean, we do have joint planning goals in there, but
I'll talk a little bit in my presentation
Okay.
about the relationship between them all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here. Thanks so much to for the intro. My name is Allison Osterberg. I'm the planning manager at Thurston Regional Planning Council. And I've been at TRPC for about 5 years, and I just want to preface this to say I'm here to talk about the regional transportation plan, which I have helped work on, but I want to give credit. The lead staff on this project is Katrina Van Every, our transportation manager. But we're trying to share the load and get the word out to everyone across the community. So I will try my best to answer any questions that you have. We have a short presentation, but if you have other questions, feel free to ask. And if I don't have the answer, I'd be happy to look into things and send a report back that. So, Just a little background, if you're not familiar with Thurston Regional Planning Council, not a surprise, lots of people have heard of us. We've been around, I'm used to saying more than 50 years, but we're actually getting close to 60 years in the community. And we are an intergovernmental board, so we include representatives from all the cities and the towns in Thurston County, as well as school districts, conservation districts, the port, intercity transit. So a lot of special use districts are also a part of our board of tribes. And we meet on issues that cross boundaries. That's really part of our work, is to bring good data and information, to make informed decisions, to act as a convener, to bring different folks together in our community, and to talk about how do we build consensus about long-term thinking about how we're building the Thurston region. And we coordinate a lot on different state and federal requirements. And the biggest part of our work is with transportation. And so the regional transportation plan, you can go ahead to the next slide, is one of the biggest pieces of the work that we do. So the regional transportation plan gets updated every 5 years. We're working on an update right now. And what are a few takeaways that people should know from this update? Let's see, go ahead to the next slide. Yeah, one more. Great. So we update the regional transportation plan every 5 years, and so we're always kind of updating the best information we have. One thing we can really say is that, no surprise to folks in Yelm, our region is growing very, very quickly, and that is resulting in increased traffic volumes that are also leading to more production in certain places. So the regional transportation plan includes a lot of projects, many of which will help to mitigate those congestion issues associated with the growth that we're seeing. But what we're also seeing is that planned land use and roadway capacity improvements alone are not going to be sufficient to address all the issues we're seeing coming up in our transportation modeling, or our road network, and different kinds of regional goals that we have. So we're making good progress, and we're still kind of, what we're seeing right now at this point in time is that we're falling short of a lot of our goals. But there's still a lot of room to make good progress on reaching those goals, and I'll talk a little bit more about what they are. And specifically, the timing with comprehensive plan updates means that the way we've been talking about this regional transportation plan update is that it's kind of like an interim step. So the comprehensive plans and regional transportation plan need to be consistent with each other, but the timing's a little bit off this cycle. And so this time we're on our 5-year cycle. Everyone in our region is updating comprehensive plans by the end of the year. So we know there are going to be changes that you're all discussing later tonight and over the next couple of months about land use and transportation and many, many things that we know are going to change. When we come around for the next, those are not going to be reflected in the regional transportation plan right now. But you can use it as a snapshot of what things are going to look like based on sort of what we have planned out right now. And think about if there are changes that we want to make from that, they can be embedded into the comprehensive plan update. And when we next come around to do our next update in 5 years, we'll be looking at those updated land use, transportation plans, utility plannings, and it'll be incorporated at that. We'll go ahead to the next slide. So the regional transportation plan, we're calling it What Moves You. We're looking out to 2050, and the regional transportation plan is a roadmap that looks at the transportation system across the Thurston County region over the next 25 years. And the relationship is a little bit faint here with comprehensive plans. So the regional transportation plan is at that regional level, and it's at a pretty high level. So we're really looking at things that are affecting, it doesn't include every local project that you're looking at in Yelm or that other cities and towns are looking at, but what are the ones that are really affecting movement across our region and the ability of people to get where they need to go, crossing boundaries. That's what we're really looking at. We do look a lot at like our state highway system is part of that, as well as kind of our larger routes connecting communities and issues like transit and all those, and how we're funding the system as a whole. So the regional transportation plan, what we see in different parts of state law is that regional transportation plans must be consistent with land use elements developed under the Growth Management Act. But transportation elements developed for comprehensive plans must be consistent with the regional transportation plan. So it has this kind of circular thing, and transportation elements need to be consistent with land use elements and vice versa. And so we're always kind of in this cycle of learning from our partners, kind of where do you want to go, showing where we're at, and we're looking for consistency. What we're trying to make sure is that we're all on the same page as a region, who's planning what time, when are different projects going to be coming live, so that we have a good understanding about, especially how the roadway network is working. Go ahead to the next slide. So what's in the plan? As I mentioned, we're looking out 25 years. So our year that we're looking out to is 2050. We look at all transportation modes, so vehicle use, but also transit, walking, biking, different kinds of modes. We set regional goals and policies. We make recommendations about things we should be looking at over the next 5 years. And we do a financial forecast. One of the kind of things about the regional transportation plan is that it needs to be financially constrained. We have to say this is what we want to do over that 25-year planning horizon, and here is how we're planning to pay for it with a variety of federal, state, and local funds. And then we do look at future conditions and how well what we have planned is matching up with what we're seeing in the demographic, population, and employment. So for this RTP update, we did not a major overhaul. It was more tweaking. I think what we're expecting is that with a lot of big changes coming in the comprehensive plan, the next RTP update is going to be a bigger update. So this one, we were just looking more at some areas where we've done some work as a region. We want to have it reflected. So we have some changes in the plan. We really look through talking a lot in our region around safety issues when it comes to our transportation system. And how can we always have safety as a goal, but how can we make that a little more operational? We've been looking at equity and how well people across our region in all areas, how well are they able to access and use the transportation system? We've done a lot of planning work as a region around climate change, both on the adaptation side and the mitigation side. So we've incorporated a lot of that language into the plan. And the emphasis is really on maintaining the system we've already invested in. We hear a lot from our partners is just the cost of maintaining the system, and that really needs to be a priority. So that's definitely a priority in the RTP. The RTP includes a list of projects that just emphasizing things that will help achieve those goals, but especially maintaining the connections that we have. We also have a series of regional targets and goals that we track our progress on, and those include safety-related goal. We have adopted Target 0 as a region, which is reducing traffic fatalities and serious injuries to 0. We're looking to, as part of our land use goal, is increasing the share of households in urban areas and preserving rural areas, so kind of concentrating the growth to make sure trips can be shorter within urban areas. And overall decreasing annual vehicle miles traveled per person and decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. Those are kind of our 2 climate related goals. And the third one is related as well. So increasing the share of trips that are taken other than in a single occupancy vehicle. So either transit, walking, biking, other kinds of modes. So we just have a goal to increase the share of trips that are using other modes overall. The next slide. So go hit a couple of them. Great.
There we go.
There we go. So how will the Thurston region change when we're looking at 2050? Well, we've got more than 100,000 more people in the region overall. And I think within Thurston County, the Elm area is definitely one of the fastest growing areas that we're seeing. So we are seeing a lot of growth projected specifically and for the Thurston region overall. That translates to 58,000 more housing units. We've done some work with Yelm and other jurisdictions. We're projecting out kind of what we're looking at for housing overall. We've also done some work projecting jobs, and where those jobs are located also drives a lot of how our transportation system functions and how much, you know, people are traveling to get to and from work. And what we're seeing is a pretty big increase in our urban areas along those urban corridors and centers. And so we're seeing a higher concentration of folks who are living near transit and are able to use transit regularly. Next slide. We also already have planned around 80 regional projects. Again, this isn't every project that's planned in every jurisdiction, but a lot of the bigger ones. So 18 miles of new roadways, a lot of some adding new lanes or more turn lanes to kind of, well, those are safety concerns. More than 65 miles of new bicycle and pedestrian facilities, 29 miles of new multi-use trails. That includes the Prairie Line Trail is in the RTP. We have several big realigned highway interchanges that are planned over the next 25 years and a variety of improved transit. Go ahead. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of the projects that are in the RTP that are planned for the Yelm area. Some of those new connections are mentioned there are Coates Avenue extension, Mossman Avenue, the Tahoma Boulevard extension, and of course the big one for Yelm is Yelm Loop. And so that's all built. We have a transportation model that we create to develop the RTP and do other projects. And so our modeling team works with transportation folks, planners, and engineers from all the cities. We talk to them about timing of when certain projects would likely be constructed, and we create a model of the system to show what it would look like under kind of current conditions, what it would look like with the projects we already have funding for, and what it would look like in the future with all the projects we're hoping to get funding for and do. And so these are some of the projects for Yelm that we built into the transportation model and that we would recommend be included and be completed within that time frame to meet the goals we have for. Next slide. There are also a couple of just projects and studies that folks are planning to do. For this region, it's more intercity transit has a couple where they're looking kind of system wide at how their system's going to function and how they're going to roll that out, including doing more express service or different kinds of connections. And there are a couple of projects that WashDOT is doing. Obviously, the Yelm Loop is a big one for this area, and working on those intersection improvements for the roundabouts on SR 7 and State Route 702. We have a couple of studies that we at TRPC are planning on doing to help inform future projects that could be done around the county. That includes looking at how our transportation system functions as a system for bicycles or for people who are cycling. We have a freight mobility strategy that we'll be kicking off later this year, looking at freight needs in our region. We're looking at different ways of measuring the effectiveness of our transportation system. That's the multimodal level of service. And we have a big project we just kicked off to look regionally at safety issues. So we'll probably be hearing more from us about that one.
Can we ask questions or should we wait to ask questions?
This is my last slide. So if you want to run through here, we can just open it up. So that's a nutshell about the regional transportation plan. So we're about to release the draft. It'll go to our board to release. It'll come out later toward the end of this month. And we'll have a public review period through April and May for people to comment on it. There'll be more information that will be available for people who want to comment on the draft. And then we're looking to move forward with recommendations through our system so that actually like right at the beginning of July, we're looking to have it be adopted and be in effect in July. And so this new RTP is the one that I think with the timing, we're looking at, we're doing consistency review with your transportation element. We'll be doing it based on the new RTP, because I think you guys will likely be coming in after this one, the new one's in place. But we recognize that there's a lot of moving pieces right now. And so when we're doing the consistency review, it's with an eye to understanding that's happening. So, and with that, I'll just leave it there and open it up to any questions you'll have.
I'm curious to know first, for what PRPC is providing with the project list and such. Is that a guidance for decision makers, and which decision makers? It's extracted from the projects that are already in list like WisDOT or city. Does it help with the prioritization of funding at the state level? How does it work?
I see. Yes, it does help with getting funding. In fact, usually when you're going for, it depends on the funding. All the funding has different rules, but for a lot of the funding, including what we coordinate at TRPC, we coordinate the distribution of a lot of federal funding for transportation projects. Projects that rise to that regional level do need to be listed in the RTP in order to access funding. So it is one of the steps. We put it in the regional transportation plan, and that should largely match up with what is in what we call the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, which is similar to if you guys do a TIP, a Transportation Improvement Program, very similar to that. So this is sort of a long-term 25-year plan, and then we have a shorter-term plan that you need to have the projects in that plan in order to access some of the funding.
And I have the question.
No, go ahead.
The other one, when you talked about safety, I'm curious, does some of the issues that have come up recently with major disasters, like the wildfires in California, North LA, of access, of having an insufficient number of exit routes, really caused me to think about, we have 2 major roads and that's it. And if we had to escape, if it was the Lahar, we'd have only 1 road because of where the Lahar would go. Is that in the safety that's being looked at because it's a regional problem, or is that something that's even out of the scope of what the RPC is engaged in?
That's a great question. I would say, I think that particular situation is a little outside of the scope of what we'll be looking at on with the Regional Safety Action Plan, but it's not under the scope of what TRPC does. So, 2 things I would, it's a good thing to be thinking about, and especially for a long term. So we have a project that's underway right now that we're working on. That's an emergency detour routes project. It was spurred a lot by the Amtrak train derailment, and especially the effects that were felt strongest in Yelm, but in many parts of the community. And so we've done some modeling work that looks at, what happens when we have certain big closures on I-5. How does that affect our surface streets, and what could we do to be prepared for them? And so that work is looking a little bit at that. We have identified a project, but we don't have funding for it yet. So we've identified it as an unfunded need to do a transportation resilience strategy. And that's really looking at just what your question is. For a variety of different natural hazards, how should we be thinking about our transportation system and how it should perform in the event of some kind of emergency, whether that's fire, flooding, any number of situations. And so it's something we've identified as of interest and a need in the community, but we don't have a funding source for it.
I'm glad you've identified it. At least maybe it can be an asterisk.
What that means is that we're looking for funding. We'd like to do in the next.
Anybody else have a
I
question?
just have a question myself, so,
with this transportation and stuff, and I've been here a long time, since '86. And it seems like when the freeways have their issues, we all get a bottleneck when it comes to crossing the bridge down here at McKenna. So you're going from Thurston into Pierce County. So is there a provision or is there a method of madness or whatever you want to call it, to where transportation would also be able to work somewhat with the Pierce County side and see if we couldn't get another bridge in there?
So what I'll say is that, so Yelm has some pretty big projects identified in the RDP, the Yelm Loop, the roundabouts, all of those are really helpful, and they've shown to be really, really helpful in the detour routes, in the emergency detour, in a situation that. And what I'll say is Yelm is growing so quickly that we're not likely to see, you're still likely to see a lot of congestion because you have these environmental constraints for where Yelm is, like, there are these constraints. And so something we identify in the RTP, we kind of flag some of those areas as assessment areas. Like we've thrown everything we know at it already with the projects that we know are funded and are likely to happen. And we haven't solved it. That's what our transportation model is saying. And so it's one of the areas that we say we have to keep coming back and thinking about how to do this. And so I would say, yeah, that having just the one connection into Pierce County from, I mean, just the Nisqually River in general is a very challenging environmental that has made it's for Thurston County. It's just one of our major transportation challenges and always has been. How do we get across the Nisqually River? And that's still the case when we're looking out, and it is definitely something that's an area where TRPC, kind of our function, is working with partners, working with our congressional delegation, our state delegations, and our local partners to say what's possible here. Priority has been on doing the Yelm Loop, getting that through, getting all those pieces funded, getting the roundabout funded, and doing that. But once we feel like that's really securely there, we will absolutely be talking about this.
Anybody else got any comments before I start? Okay, thank you for the presentation. I do have a couple questions. You may be aware, last month we had a presentation on the environmental aspect for our comprehensive plan, which also addressed the greenhouse gas portion. I understand that, looking at it from, regional aspect, but one of the things was that they had and that the consultants had in their research is that 6% of the Yelm population traveled 90 minutes for employment, and then within Yelm city limits that, most of the employment was either, like service type employment or construction, type thing. So with Yelm, I mean, we kind of have to go outside of the area to, either get employment or necessities, things like that. You had mentioned about the 52,000 jobs on, I don't know how much that's looking at Yelm, what we're going to be able to do here, but I mean, I would be interested if part of the RTP can, kind of sync up with, kind of the statistics that are coming out in the environmental portion of our comprehensive plan. Yeah. So I would be interested in that, and then and hopefully the multimodal study. I don't know if that'll help answer some of that, as well. So I'd be interested in seeing some of that. Regarding what Ann mentioned, I think it would behoove of the Regional Transportation Council to look at if one of the major things, as you know, living in the Pacific Northwest, I mean, the big one, and one of the Lahar zones is going down the Nisqually River. So that poses another thing. They've got the major exercises, in the, Pacific Northwest that takes place. So I think if the regional council should, kind of look at some of the statistics that they have on how that would impact the transportation in the area and how it would affect us, because I mean, things happen with the traffic going through Yelm because of things that happen on I-5, majorly, and it happens, fairly frequently. So it's not something that's caused by us or by our growth or something, but it's something that, happens, on state level, because of the transportation there. So it would be kind of nice if that was looked at, just, as far as what the emergency management agency says how our transportation would be impacted. And I think that would be a good thing to at least have, a couple paragraphs in there, on what they say. So, but that's basically all I got.
Yeah. Great points. Kind of two kind of different responses. So for your environment chapter and how you're incorporating climate change, as I mentioned, our timeline is a little ahead of the comp plans. So what we're going to have reflected in the RTP is not going to incorporate the work you're doing in your comp plan this cycle. And that's okay. Because we're going to be back in 5 years doing it again, and we'll have learned everything. What we're likely to do, and what we always say with the RTP, as soon as we adopt it, we're starting the next one. So we'll be looking, when the comp plans are done, at redoing our transportation model, incorporating the new land use that folks are planning, incorporating the new connections that they're planning. And a big part of our work is tracking and looking at reducing vehicle miles traveled, reducing greenhouse gases. And I didn't go into it, but there's some of the strategies and recommendations we have in the plan. And we might have updated them in the next round, depending on what's kind of happening, the discussion across the region. But it is around concentrating that growth in urban areas, or designing things in the way that where people don't have to travel long distances. So economic development within Yelm and having jobs within Yelm so that people can have the option, if they want to be shorter trip. It's definitely, something that is covered in the goals and policies we have in the RTP, right? For the LAHAR zones, another kind of leg of work that we do at TRPC is around environmental planning, including hazard planning. So we developed the natural hazards plan for the Thurston region, and then work with individual jurisdictions. So information about my colleague, Paul Brewster, does a lot of that work. We work really closely with emergency management. And so we have a plan for the region that includes, I'm not sure where the status is with Yelms, because Paul's the expert on that, but usually then there's a jurisdiction specific plans. And what the hazard mitigation plan for the Thurston region has, that concept I said around the transportation resiliency strategy, that really comes from that work of flagging that we do have areas that are at risk because of potential hazards, including cars, and we should be thinking about it. So that I'll have to I think we have that incorporated in the many goals and policy language we have in the RTP, because we do have a section on promoting resilience and thinking ahead. That we've identified that as a need. And that's definitely something I can bring back as that's a concern that we're hearing from this area.
Thank you.
I've got a couple of things, that's all right. You mentioned one of the first slides that we're not meeting our goals, and I'm just curious, is it just population growth that's preventing us from meeting these goals, or are there other things that are primary factors?
Yeah, if you want to go back to the goals, I mean, they're, affordable. All right, so these are kind of our regional goals, and there's a variety of things. So yes, our population is growing a lot. It makes it challenging, particularly for decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. And it actually, our VMT goal is per person. So with that, we're off base. But I think that the challenges have more to do in many cases with our land use, and just that the land use that we have, we've been a more rural community, and so that means we've developed a little more product than some of our. other ones, and also I want to note that we have pretty ambitious goals as a region about the kind of quality of life and the standards that we want to have for our community. And so in some cases, they're stretch goals. I mean, and this is a state goal, but also our goal to have 0 traffic fatalities and serious injuries. I mean, no one can argue with that. No one wants anyone else to die from driving or being in traffic. And yet that's not just, it's not population that's driving that. But what we do see are that we're not going in the right direction. Like, we're going up instead of going down. We want to at least be trying to get on the pathway to zero.
Zero is a pretty ambitious goal.
Zero, you can't argue with that. That's the correct target.
So, just one comment on the traffic, because every time we do, on the current planning side, a new subdivision, a new apartment development, we hear lots of people saying, you know, no growth until we figure out our traffic problems. And what I hope will come out of our comp plan, and I don't know, and with the regional plan, is to demythologize where our traffic problems lie. Growth inside the city, of course, is going to impact traffic somewhat, but that's not the source of the city's problems. The city's problems are through traffic. I think we get about 50,000 through trips a day on Yelm Avenue. And so really, that's the growth of the other cities that's affecting us. And I hope we can figure out a way to message that better so that people understand when we are getting this growth, which is good for Yelm, that it's not the cause of the problem that they think it is.
Well, I think that part of the loop that's getting close to being completed.
Yeah.
I think that will siphon off quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing in the transportation model is sort of like a lot, like it's going to help a lot with that through traffic. And so it is kind of a conversation for Yelm about the quality of the community that you want to have. That Main Street and Yelm certainly isn't unique in having a state highway going through the middle of its town and then rolling around it and being like, oh, this is benefits and non-benefits. And so, you know, I think at the same time, Yelm is growing a lot. And so I think that it isn't that congestion is going away, but the kind of congestion you have, if you have a lot more activity happening in the city of Yelm because a lot more people live here and are doing things in Yelm, that's a little different from just having people go all the way through. And I think that is what we're seeing working with our modeling team today and asking that question. And that is kind of what we're seeing. So, you know, we're not seeing with the improvements you have that congestion is going away. But really, that's good news, because if we weren't doing the Yelm loop and there weren't these improvements coming through, we would be seeing really, really negative effects for Yelm in the future.
Out of curiosity, is there a representative from Yelm on the planning council?
There is. So Joe DePinto is on TRPC, our council. And then Tracy Wood is on, we have a second council called the Transportation Policy Board, which is advisory to our council, but also, you know, serves oversight over the transportation program. And Tracy Wood is Yelm's representative on that group.
One last thing I want to say about Allison TRPC. So, and maybe for the benefit of Dana and David, I'm not sure if you were here at that time, but months ago, we presented a bunch of stuff on housing. So the last legislative session, and 12/20, said that we have to plan for and accommodate all forms of housing, affordable housing, all the way up through 120% of the you know, market rate. As part of that, Commerce basically gave us a few models that we could use to try to predict our housing needs over the next 20 years. And so TRPC coordinated that, convened it. They brought the cities together from around the county. That's where we got our numbers. So for us, it's about 7,500 units over the next 20 years, a large percentage of which have to be affordable. It's going to be very challenging. But anyway, Allison and Michael Ambrogi were the two people that were sort of leading that effort. So the data that we're going to be having, and which will be showing up in our housing element all throughout it, and it's somewhat in the land use element too, is stuff that we got from TRPC.
Hey,
Well,
thank you.
thanks again for your time, and when the RTP is out for public comment, we'll be getting the notice out. So if there's anything, at any point that you have questions about, information with the slides, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, there's nothing for public hearing. Any subcommittee reports?
We still have a couple items on.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, the climate measures.
Yeah, so this one being, of course, we can spend as much time on it as you choose, but my thought was that we wouldn't spend a whole lot of time on this evening. This is basically the information that you saw when it was presented by the consultant just a month ago. What we've tried to do is winnow it down to what we think might be a workable set of at least, putting our toe in the water for coming up with some climate action goals. Kind of listening to what, even though I had to watch it on video for the video last month, but making sure it's appropriate to Yelm, that it's feasible, cost effective. And so I guess you could say that we were kind of shooting for some low hanging fruit to get started. And then the way this is being organized right now, it's kind of color coded into like, oh, maybe our top suggestions all the way down to low priority stuff. A little bit more filtering I might want to do on here is to also take credit for the stuff that we're already doing, so we can have those as goals. But a lot of the stuff that we're doing around our water system planning, for example, and reclaiming water and all that, are things that we're already there. So finding the things we're doing, finding the things we can easily do as the top priorities for goals and policies that could go into the comp plan. And then other things that might be more appropriate for, when Yelm's a city of 20,000, not 10,000, for example.
Are we still sitting at around 250? Because I know when we looked at it last month on the recommendations, I think there was close to, 250 might be a little high, but as far as the number of recommendations that was listed in there.
Yeah, and just to be clear, those weren't really recommendations per se. That was just a consultant pretty much throwing everything at the wall.
Right.
For us to look at and then decide for ourselves what we think would be the, top priorities. So I guess what I was going to ask, and this is definitely winnowed down from that.
Okay.
What I was going to ask for tonight is just that you take this home over the next month, just kind of filter through it and see if you feel like we're close to hitting the mark, are these your priorities as well? There may be some that we put in here as low priority, or maybe just to consider that you think are more important. And so we could take one more stab at it next month, maybe spend a half an hour and see if there's some overlap between that.
Okay.
But right now you can see just in the strongly consider, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I see some in the consider that I kind of like. Also, as I look back through it, I thought that way too. But I think that we want to keep it to like 20 or less. Keep it simple.
Right.
If we can.
How would we provide feedback? Do we provide feedback to our chair?
I think you're talking, provide feedback next month. Is that what you're talking
Yeah, I
about?
know, I was wondering about that, because it's like, it can be a big complicated matrix, right? Because you like 4 things that are different than 4 things that David likes and all that.
Just there are 2 in not recommended that I think are very important.
Yeah. Well,
But that's,
can you think about that and send out an email to see like what's the best way to collect that information? I might tap Allison's brain. She does that kind of stuff all the time. You're welcome.
Yeah. Because if, in providing feedback, if the other council members, commissioners don't hear what our concerns are, and if it just goes strictly to you, then we're discounted. I mean, if
Yeah.
we
Well, I
discounted,
was gonna put it on the agenda again for next month, so you could basically discuss what you think should or shouldn't be on there. It wouldn't just be me.
how to manage that would just, do we,
I guess it depends on how many county different you want to change.
oh,
I mean, if you only have 2 or 3 that you feel strongly about, I think we could easily discuss it within the framework of the planning.
two or
meeting.
maybe
If you have a lot.
person.
Well,
One thing you can do is you could send me your comments and I can distribute them to all the planning commission members before we meet. So they can think about what you think about your ideas.
Yeah, well, what we can do is like a week beforehand or whatever, see where everybody's sitting and let you know, okay, I've got so many I want to address, he's got so many he wants to address. And then that way you've kind of got a number of, and we've kind of got a guesstimate on time and,
Yeah.
how much stuff we're gonna have to put together.
And for some of these, just to anticipate and then maybe not be as embarrassed when you ask, you might say, well, what is this? And I'm gonna say, I'm not exactly sure. Some of them require like digging into how other communities have implemented some of these kinds of actions, so.
How will this be used?
Well, the information, so we're required to do climate planning as part of our comp plan update, and it's a new element in comp plan, so that came out of the legislature. We got a $500,000 grant to do it, so it is funded. That's where the greenhouse gas inventory came from, the climate vulnerability assessment. So those are the technical documents that are being used to come up with some goals and actions to go in the comp plan. Those goals and actions that go into the comp plan could later turn into projects, capital projects. It could turn into new zoning code, other things in our regulations. Could turn into new building code in some ways. One of the things we have, and this is where a lot of overlap occurs, even though it's not out of the climate planning, it's related in the land use element. We're now required to have goals for wildfire interface. Of course, those two things are related. The information we get out of this piece could also inform our land use element to establish goals for those.
Couldn't you kind of say it helps address some of the issues, some of the environmental issues that Yelma's gonna face, and that we need to have some parts in there on how to address those.
Yeah. And again, the climate stuff the way I'm envisioning it now is it will have its own separate chapter, but a lot of it will be dispersed throughout other parts of the comp plan. So we had our climate consultants meet with our traffic consultant last week, because a lot of the climate stuff, like Allison mentioned, like multimodal transportation and promoting other forms of traffic other than vehicle miles, is related to climate, and climate's related to that. So hopefully it all ties together.
Yeah, maybe if you, I don't know if you watched the video from the last meeting or not, when they did the presentation, that might kind of help
Okay,
answer some questions as well.
yeah, it's gonna go in the comp plan, so
Yeah.
I get that.
So,
And I think if I'm not mistaken, I might have the date wrong, but I think around May 13th, we're shooting to have a joint city council planning commission meeting. That's according to the mayor. I think that will be in part to discuss this climate stuff.
I know he'd mentioned it's,
I think I heard him tell you.
There's one on April 8th, I think.
there's a city workshop. Okay, yeah, I've got May 13th at 6 o'clock for a joint planning commission city council. And that was what the mayor was talking about.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't know that they had settled on that date, so I will have to get with them to get more details.
Okay, do you want us to vote on what we're gonna do with this for next meeting, or just?
I don't think you need to vote on this. Yeah, it's really more of a work study type situation at this point.
So, was there any further?
Not on this.
Okay. Okay, there's a proposal to move the planning commission meetings to the third Tuesday of each month. Now, is that also at 4 o'clock?
Yes, we keep the same time. The reason for requesting the move is that Mondays have a lot of holidays. And when we have a planning commission meeting that falls on a holiday, of course, we don't have that planning commission meeting, and it gets real challenging to try to get everyone's schedules meshed after that. So if it would work out for everyone here for a Tuesday, then I would propose that. I mean, if there's any one board member or a commission member who can't make it, then I would recommend we don't do it because, I mean.
I think what we'll do is go down the line, if that's okay. Dave, do you know?
Yeah, no, that works for me, and I think logistically with holidays, being on Tuesday, now what, is it possible, or how does anyone else feel about pushing it out an hour, like starting at 5? As opposed to 4?
Well, I guess that's kind of depends on city staff, I think, because I mean, they're still on the clock. When we're doing this, so.
Instead of OT.
Well, we didn't propose that. I probably want to talk to Cody about that more.
Yeah, actually, I had talked to Cody at the community conversations, and he had said that was what was gonna be proposed. Was pushing it out to the third Tuesday and at 5 p.m. Maybe there's a disconnect there.
I
But
think so, because I talked to him today and we were just talking about changing the day.
Yeah, because even when I talked to the mayor, it wasn't brought up about 5 o'clock.
I'm good with Tuesday.
I mean,
And we can revisit the time thing.
Bob?
I'm good with Tuesday.
Okay, I'm good with Tuesday, yeah.
I've checked, there's one Tuesday in June that I'm committed to babysit my granddaughters in California.
You can put them on
I'll put them on Zoom. Do it on Zoom.
Tuesday works for me.
That was my only day off, but I can move.
All
I
right.
appreciate that. I do think at least as far as the, overall flow of the commission, because meeting once a month, if you have to miss two times because of holidays. And if you can't get something rescheduled, that's a big, especially right now when we're starting to ramp up more for the conference. All right, that's all I have.
Okay, moving on. All right.
Do we need to make a motion for that date change?
I think it might be a good idea to vote. I was wondering about that today, but I wasn't able to talk to the clerk. But I mean, we don't need an ordinance or anything like that, but if you want to vote, just to put it on the,
We can do it just for, Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carried, moving to Tuesdays,
Third Tuesday.
third Tuesday. Okay, number 9, public hearing, none. Is there any subcommittee reports?
I can give you sort of a gist of what's happening in Parks
Okay.
Board. And that is that there's the approvals have come through for going to bid and doing all the work on the rest of the trail across the river. The Prairie Line Trail will now, within a few months, there'll be construction to put basically as precast planks across the top of the rails that are on the bridge across the Nisqually. And then all kinds of security stuff that needs to be put on so that people don't,
Jumpers.
no jumpers, accidentally follows that are there. And we will have a trail that has lookout points and other information provided for people to go all the way down Prairie Line Trail to the river and to actually have a very good view of the river there. That's a major curve in the river. So you get to see both directions. It's gonna be pretty extreme. Yeah, good time.
Now, the trail also extend to into Roy.
The trail will extend into Roy, that's Pierce County, as we know, and so it requires working with Pierce County on the funding and on the actual construction of that part. So I don't have a time frame for that particular one, but as you can see, it was on TRPC list, so.
I'm surprised, by the way, at $10 million, it was more than our roads projects.
It's quite a bit because I don't know if you included the pricing on what's been done so far to date. I think that's the full price of the extension of
I think it's, because I'm not an expert on it, but there's a couple phases. It's
the three phases. Yeah. Yeah, the 3 phases, they've done 1 phase, now the next phase is the bridge. And then the 3rd phase is into Pierce County. And so when I looked at the number, I said, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'd like to tell. And other than that, there's extensive work that's going to be looked at doing the contract for on Longmire Park to get better drainage. They've done all of the analysis work to determine what needs to happen. And now they're starting on looking at this is all of the diagrams that you have to be able to say, this is what they'd actually design work. So it'll be ready for the loop when it comes in, because the new trails alongside the loop will intersect with the trails that are going to be within Longmire. And that's to help people that are on multimodal. People are pushing either strollers or carrying wagons for the athletic equipment to be able to get to the ball fields and to the play area and back again along the trails.
You know, the Road and Road project is gonna have a shared use path with it, which will connect to the trail. It's gonna make I think it's gonna make a loop, you know, for bicycles and other things.
It'll come all the way up Roten Road to the trail.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's gonna be, I think, a really, really good thing that down Roten Road is where the dog park is.
Yeah.
So people will start using the dog park even more and not using the other parks for the dogs.
Any additional reports?
1 week, I'll have it for you.
Is it gonna be on trees or?
Yeah.
Okay. So is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
And 4:58, meeting closed.